Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Well-Appointed Mystic. I have never done like a classic unboxing video, but I ordered 2 decks from a recent sale on Llewellyn, and they kind of have a similar theme, so I thought it would be kind of fun to flip through them together and just take a look, and you guys will get my sort of first impressions. These were decks that I had originally looked at because I've opened this only so much as to have taken the plastic off. I didn't actually look at anything. I just that's not my kind of ASMR. So but these were decks I originally picked out because I thought a friend of mine would like them. She lived in Japan for several years. She speaks fluent Japanese. And so I pulled these decks up and I said, hey, are you interested in these? And she didn't seem particularly grabbed by them. She doesn't read tarot to the same extent that I do. So I think she was just like, no, I have enough decks. But I thought that they were really beautiful, and I thought it might be kind of a fun way for me to maybe learn a little bit more about sort of Japanese folklore and Japanese folk tales. So as you can see, the 2 decks I picked up is the Ukiyo Tarot by Pietro Torino and the Yokai Tarot that is, let's see, I'm going to pull them out of the box, and I will get the box out of the way in a second. Marga Biazzi and Paolo Bertazzo. So I think these were both Lo Scarabeo decks. Yes, both are Lo Scarabeo through Llewellyn. And what's surprising to me was that Lo Scarabeo would have 2 different sort of Japanese folk tale decks, and then that they would be sort of so different in terms of how they were packaged and produced. So I don't know if it's a difference in when these decks came out, but you can see the Yokai deck the box is bigger, it's thicker overall, and just, you know, it's a pop top box, where this is a classic 2-part box. So with Lo Scarabeo decks, there's a greater chance of getting a deck that is more like there's not a lot in the guidebooks. So I'm not sure how involved these guidebooks will be. So you are coming along on the ride with me. So I'm going to go ahead and open both of them kind of at the same time, and then we'll flip through them sort of separately. So again, I went so far only as to make sure there wasn't any plastic or anything on the insides. The Ukiyo was in a cellophane wrap, and then the deck inside was also wrapped in cellophane. The Yokai deck had no plastic wrap, just dots on the side, and then the cards themselves were wrapped with just a small piece of paper. So from an environmental standpoint, the Yokai deck is definitely a better option. The Ukiyo is a lot of plastic. Not that that would be a thing that would make someone choose one way or the other whether they were going to purchase it. I really enjoy the artwork on these boxes. So when you slide it out, you get a different face, which I think is really cool. So this is like the mask. This may be sort of that same idea of like the mask over, which I think is kind of cool. There's less artwork overall on the Ukiyo deck. So there are both decks removed. So both guidebooks look very similar in size. Obviously, one deck is slightly larger than the other, so the books are a little bit bigger. But they have a little bit more information. They usually have several languages. So in this case, the English is this first section in the Ukiyo deck, and then the Yokai oops, little butterfingers there. Looks like it stops here. So that's the English, and then it looks like Italian and Spanish are the other languages, maybe. Yeah. So looks like there's probably 3 languages in here. So this one looks like it has a little bit more information. This one, the paper's like a dull coated paper. This one is just a uncoated paper stock. Not that that makes a difference one way or the other, but just thought it was interesting. Like I said, these are both from Lo Scarabeo, so my inclination was to think that they would sort of use the same printing techniques for both, but they do not. So in the Yokai, it has keywords, and then it looks like a translation and some information about the individual yokai, which I think is kind of cool. There's not a ton of information, but probably enough information here that if you were to want to go online and look up a specific yokai, you could. So yokai are the spirits of Japanese folklore, is what the description is here. So basically, maybe probably the closest comparison would be like fairies or folk tale heroes kind of thing in more Western culture. And then the Ukiyo is a journey into the floating world. And Ukiyo is a term that embodies an artistic or cultural concept developed during the Edo period, 1603 to 1868. It evokes the essence of the impermanence and transience of human experiences, as well as an urban lifestyle dedicated to the pursuit of pleasure in all its forms. So that's kind of an interesting take. So where this one is more folklore, this is more about the floating world, which is a Japanese concept. So let's see kind of what these look like. So we'll do sort of the quick cardstock comparison. This is a very matte, thick cardstock. It feels pretty good in the hand, even though obviously the cards are a little bit larger than normal. This feels like a normal Lo Scarabeo deck. Yeah, this feels more like a classic Lo Scarabeo, which is a little glossy. Pretty simple overall. I'm going to take these title cards off. So I don't know if you can tell in the light the shine on that over this sort of matte finish. So they do feel different, and I feel like they'll have a different experience. I mean, just looking here at the difference between the Fools, this one is definitely more of like, I guess, like I said, the closest comparison I could make would be like a folk tale character, you know, something from like Aesop's Fables or something like that in the Western culture, where this much more feels almost anime, manga kind of vibe. I'm saying this, please don't, none of this is an insult. I don't know a lot about Japanese folklore and Japanese culture. I just thought these were really interesting decks and I wanted to learn more about them. So if I'm misdescribing anything, or I'm not doing it to be insulting, I'm fascinated and I'm very excited to learn more about these cultures. So anything I say is from sheer ignorance, not bias or anything like that. So I'm just trying to process the concepts through lenses that I have more familiarity with. So, so then the magicians, we have a human figure here, but what looks almost like a raccoon, which I think is great for the magician. This feels more like sort of classically RWS kind of vibe with all the pieces on the table. The high priestess figures to me, feel like they have a lot of similarity, and both feel fairly classic high priestess cards. They're both really pretty and I really like them. The Empress, I was trying to figure out, I see her foot here and I thought this was like the bottom half of her dress, but I think she's sitting on top of this. And so that is her actually. For a moment, I thought she had a leg growing out of her, but I think that's her leg. And then she's sitting on something. And this one, in this case, I feel like the Empress here feels more adult, a little bit more older. This feels like a little more like the spirit of the Empress maybe, versus this one feeling more like a classic Empress. The Emperor Dragon versus a human figure. The illustrations, these are very dark and moody. I like them for their sort of aesthetic differences. I think that's really nice. The Hierophant is definitely a cat person, versus a sort of classic Hierophant, even doing the classic gestures and everything. So we have the Lovers, again, very similar aesthetic. They're really pretty. These cards are beautiful, and I really like both of them. I'm glad I bought both of them. I had been trying to decide between the two, and because of the sale, I thought I would just go ahead and get them both. And I've been waiting to do this video to open them up, so you're genuinely getting my first impressions. I love that this is sort of an older, like a crone type woman in this chariot, and you can't see what is pulling the vehicle. This one's very classic chariot image. Do we have Strength? This is very unusual. I really like it. This, not knowing anything about the specific yokai in the story, but this idea of like this young child wrestling with this really large fish, like something that might make her afraid, I think is really cool. The Hermits, both of these are lovely. The Wheel of Fortune, both of them just say the wheel. I love these little figures. Those are so cool. This is so beautiful. I'm surprised how much I like the artwork and everything. I wasn't sure. Not that I expected to dislike it, but sometimes, particularly with decks that sort of have a Japanese influence, currently a lot of times those decks have more of like a manga feel, which tends to feel kind of, to me, feels kind of young. And so making it a little bit harder for me to relate to it, as I am not a young person anymore. I wish I was. But in the case of Justice, she's got the heart and the feather balanced on a pipe. So definitely something in a story. And then she has the classic scales. Yeah, so I feel like these, sorry, if you have a spider fear, I apologize. But this is a like yokai spider character. It's super cool if you are not bothered by spiders. I'm going to lift my hand up. Fast forward if you are spider phobic. I guess it's called arachnophobic, but this is so cool. So this yokai is sort of a spider person. It's very, very cool. And then we have sort of the classic, this kind of reminds me of the Sandman, hanging there. And then we have Death. Sort of two different interpretations, but very similar, like even in the pose and the direction, like the young version and the older version of a death figure. Temperance. Also very, very beautiful. This reminds me of like Art Nouveau kind of styling. The devil cards are both really interesting. This has a very gothmancy sort of feel, but I really like it. The Tower, this is an interesting interpretation. More classic RWS. The Star card. Oh, wow. So this is sort of a, like, kind of looks like a boar or an anteater or something with tiger legs. Very unusual. So I'll be curious to read more about what this yokai character is. And then this is sort of your classic Star. The Rabbit and the Moon, which I think is kind of fun. And I don't know if the Japanese myth about rabbits is similar to sort of the Western Rabbit and the Moon mythology. Be interested to find more about that. I like that there's no naked babies. This sun is very unusual. She looks sad, which is not usually what you expect. This is a little more melancholy, but like you've got your bright shining sun, and more of the classic, you know, sort of daisies, sunflowers kind of thing. Judgment. It's a very interesting judgment. Again, I will be curious to find more out about this. I do feel like the Ukiyo deck is leaning more at this point to a classic Rider-Waite-Smith sort of aesthetic overall, with a Ukiyo Japanese influence. This world is really interesting. The fish with the sort of seaweed creating the border. This feels more sort of classic RWS. So, okay, next we have the cups. And I didn't check to make sure that they had all the suits in the same order. I'm hoping that they do, but we'll see. I'll pause the video and move them around if I have to. So they are fully illustrated throughout. I wasn't sure. I was like, got into this and I was like, oh goodness, what if one deck is pips and the other one is illustrated or something? But it looks like they're both illustrated. This is really interesting, these sort of sea creatures. So it looks like the cups will have all sort of sea creatures in the Yokai deck. Oh, this is lovely. And again, has a little bit of that Art Nouveau feel to it. The Four of Cups. Little otter. Huh. Very interesting. This one, all 5 cups are present, which normally you see like either 2 from that are behind or empty or tipped over. So that's kind of an interesting look. Both of these are lovely. I really like the artwork. And I like how different they are. This is very light. This is very dark. I feel like this one may end up getting more use in the spring and summer seasons, where this has a sort of a deep, rich moodiness that may work really well in the fall and the winter. So lovely 7 of Cups. It's one of my favorite cards. It's uniquely similar perspective here with the 8 of Cups, although they're both pretty classic RWS look. The 9. I like this as a lovely revision to sort of the dude with all the wine glasses in the classic RWS. And the 10, this is really unique. So here you do have more of that classic. It doesn't have the rainbow necessarily, but just you do have these silhouettes of like sort of a family. And this is these wonderful creatures. So the page, these are both lovely. Unusual sea creature. The knight. Sort of this creature is riding like another sort of sea creature. Classic. I always, the Knight of Cups is always sort of like the Prince Charming sort of vibe, and this guy's definitely got that going on. Oh, this one went king and then queen. I'll just flip those around. So the Queen of Cups. Lovely, lovely. The king, this is very odd. He's sort of this like sea tortoise, sea turtle creature, where this is sort of more that classic look. So then we have coins and pentacles. I love that that's sort of that classic, sort of Chinese coin, even though it is a Japanese deck, but you know what I mean. Yeah, this definitely reminds me more of sort of fairy, gnome, troll, sea creatures, merfolk, that kind of thing. Where this one is definitely more of a sort of a classic. This is an interesting 3 of Pentacles. I like that this is sort of a young person. So there's our 4. I like this sort of greedy little monkey. The 5. The 6. Like the fox kind of holding out their hands. Really, really pretty. I'm really pleased with these. Oh, sorry, another spider. I didn't know. I didn't know. All right, so if you are arachnophobic, fast forward a couple of seconds. So this is sort of the Eight of Coins, sort of, which is interesting because I always think, you know, the Eight of Coins is always about sort of making something, kind of practicing your craft, honing your craft. So I'm curious how this spider figure with the coins, is it making the coins, or is it, so where this one definitely has that sort of like she's working on this like embroidery or whatever. So it's another one of my favorite cards. This one's lovely. Such a pretty Nine of Coins. 10. Just different ways of telling this story. Like this is all these like funky creatures. Like this looks like a lantern with a face, and then maybe an umbrella. So I think I like this one from a perspective of like, what is the legacy? What is your found family? What is your story there? And then the page. And my friend was telling me she has a tattoo of a character with that like sort of really long neck, which is I think very common in sort of Japanese folk tales, but I'm not quite sure what the meaning is, so I'll be curious to learn a bit more about that. I think it's really interesting. The Knight. Oh, I like this sort of little fey creature riding the frog. He's very dark and broody. And then, okay, we got to switch these. So here's our Queen. Both lovely. I always like when there's a bunny rabbit in with the Queen of Pentacles. And then the King. So I do find it fascinating that some of these characters are animals for your courts. The Ace of Wands. Sort of fire, sort of fey creature. Yokai, I guess, is the technical term. Interesting. Stoking the fire. I really like that as a sort of a metaphor for the Two of Wands. That's really, I think, such a quick read of that like fire creature kind of thing. Lovely, lovely. So, isn't this curious that both of the Five of Wands very much have that feel of like a Marseille Five Wands crossed sort of feel, but they interpreted them in different ways. It's just really interesting. So there's these little fey creatures, and then this is the hands holding the wands, which is cool. Whoa, sorry about that. This is a headless horse. I'm not sure what's going on here, but this creature is riding a horse with no head. So I don't know what's going on there. Interesting, this little Cyclops creature. The 7 feels very powerful. I like the blue flames. Like, that's really amazing. The 8, this is probably the most, in both decks, sort of classic RWS. I know a lot of people don't like when they kind of go with this sort of look, but I think there's a little bit of details in the background here. But yeah, I'm curious about the little rings around the staffs. So, funky, like really long tongue. So that's the 9, the 10. Well, this one feels a lot more burdensome. This one feels more like taking it and running, just go with it. So I think that's interesting. And that's one of the things that I like about looking at different tarot decks, is because even just how the images become interpreted can sort of change how you read them. You know, we often see in guidebooks where there's 3 or 4 different possible interpretations, but it's really sometimes just looking at the cards and the emotion that they bring to them will create that slightly different message, different reading. So here's our Page of Wands, like this hot rooster. And the Knights both have fire. I love that this is a raccoon riding a boar. Okay, we gotta flip these. So here's our queens, both with their lovely black cats. Some flowers. It's really nice. The cat has 2 tails. Very cool. So then the king, just a huge flaming noodle. So then we have our swords. Both beautiful. And I love just the, you know, the simplicity often of the ace cards. They really sort of kind of embody the suit in some way, just in their aesthetics. This is a crazy character here. This one's very classic. Both of these very classic RWS, sort of stabbed in the heart. This one's interesting that it is actually sort of a skeleton at rest, where this is more of that sort of, you know, usually it's like some sort of knight or paladin or something. And the 5. The 6. Both really nicely done. Classic, easy to interpret. I feel like even though these decks have these additional layers of meaning from the Yokai and the Ukiyo, I also think that because they run fairly close to the RWS, these should not be that hard to interpret without getting a ton into guidebooks and things like that. I could be wrong, like these might be harder for other people to read, but I'm not having a ton of trouble. Enough of the cards are quite similar to RWS to make for a quick read with the additional layer of these sort of, you know, folktale and floating world. It's interesting to see this spirit floating on the 10. This guy very much looks like, I think it was the Hermit card that had that same like really long nose. I'm wondering if there's something about the character that is quite similar to the two. Like, I've never thought about comparing the Hermit to the Page of Swords, but now I think I would. And then our knights. And we'll flip-flop these. So we see our queen. Very powerful. And our kings. So, and then of course they have their information cards. I don't know what other people do with these, but I use them as bookmarks. So inevitably I have a zillion of these floating around in my pile of bookmarks for books. So I'll give this one a real quick shuffle. It's actually too big for my hands. I have to do it like a side shuffle and see if I can. Yeah, these are pretty stiff cards. I think that I like that they're matte, but I honestly prefer the sort of classic Los Scarabeo cardstock. So these are a little, yeah, like my hands are just not big enough to get around these. So like there's no way. Like I just can't. I'm sorry, that's so embarrassing. And then with this deck, I think it would be really nice to paint these edges black to kind of go with everything. Although the gold would be nice too. And then, yeah, see, this deck will end up getting much more use simply because I can shuffle it without too much heartache. So I know people dismiss some of the classic Los Scarabeo cardstock because it is, you know, like it's a little bit thinner. The cards are not as thick. They don't feel as like sort of, you know, meaty or whatever. But hey, I'm a vegetarian. It's okay. It's okay with me. They can be lettuce leaves. It's all good. But yeah, so these are really beautiful. I'm surprised how much I like these. They do feel like almost storybook illustrations. And the ages feel not as young. The figures often do look young, but not like, I don't feel like I'm looking at preteens necessarily for all of these, which I think I really appreciate. So the Ukiyo feel you know, definitely fantasy images, but they don't feel like I'm looking at a bunch of teenagers, which is nice. You know, there are some older figures, but a lot of sort of indeterminate age faces, you know, as you find in storybooks and stuff. So yeah, I think this one's a beautiful deck, and I'm really glad I purchased it. It's the Ukiyo Tarot by Pietro Torino from Lo Scarabeo. And then we'll do another quick flip through of the Yokai. And yeah, I'm best off doing this. Of the two, from the view of the card backs, I think I like this one just as a little more decorative. This is fine. I'm assuming that the symbol in the middle of the Ukiyo has some significance, and the simplicity is very nice. But I kind of, this sort of reminds me a little bit of the classic RWS card backs with that same sort of flower blossom checkerboard thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? So anyway, okay, I'm gonna stop shuffling these. Like, I just randomly shuffle cards. It's just a habit now. So there's our Four of Swords, the World. I think these are going to be good readers. I love these characters are so interesting. The artwork is very finely crafted, really interesting. There's a lot of little details to catch in here. Do you see the little faces down here? I just think that there's something really nice about this. I think I'm going to end up really liking this Yokai deck. I'm assuming, I thought there was another deck out that was called a Yokai Tarot, but it may just be this one. This may have been a Kickstarter deck at some point. I'm not sure. I did not do my homework. I apologize. So anyway, I am really sorry. There's that spider image again. He's, you know, like, it's one of those things for me. I don't know if anybody else has this, but there's always like that one card that is not necessarily make or break, but will like make you decide whether or not you're going to keep looking at the deck. And for me, honestly, it's the Fool. If the first card in the deck just kind of makes me go, eh, I'm very disinclined to like keep looking at the deck, but both of these decks had lovely Fool cards. This is one of like, this may end up being one of my favorite Fool cards ever. I don't know what it is about this like little turtle frog birdman. I love him. I'm really excited to like keep using this deck, but I think there's just some real wonderful storytelling in here, and I cannot wait to learn more about these yokai. I think it's kind of fun to sort of learn about another culture's folklore and storytelling. So thanks so much for watching this video. If this is the first time you've ever watched one of my videos, thanks. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Sorry I'm getting that at the end. Please leave comments if you are familiar with any other sort of Japanese folktale sort of decks that you might recommend that I look for. I would love that. And anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.